I wanted to do this video talking about Alex Pereira potentially moving up to heavyweight to fight either Jon Jones or Tom Aspinall, the reason I am not a big fan of it, and briefly touch on Dana White's bizarre meltdown at the press conference after 303, defending Jon Jones and propping him up as if he's the only fighter in the company he cares about, and the reason why I think he's doing this, because everybody's touched up on it, everybody's shown videos of it, so there's no point in me doing that. But the fact that Dana White is doing this so aggressively and so forcefully, again, almost like his life or career depends on defending Jon Jones, it's another sign that Dana White is losing his touch. I mean, look at the cup he is sitting at this press conference with, Power Slap. How he's saying Power Slap's going to be bigger than the UFC. And he is so hell-bent on pushing Power Slap when it is one of the most ridiculous freaking things I've ever seen in my life. And he's sitting there again. Look at this like nervous look on his face. He's like, how do I push Jon Jones ahead of everybody else in the UFC, who has ruined more pay-per-views for the company than any fighter in history, failed more PED tests than anybody in the history of the company, excluding the likes of Josh Barnett and what have you. And how do I find a way to de-promote active champions like Islam Makhachev and Alex Pereira, and again, focus all my attention on Jon Jones, the guy who isn't even going to be around for much longer, and on top of that is doing several things that Dana White has always pushed back against, which is one of the reasons fans love him. He's always pushed back on champions not being active. He's always pushed back on champions trying to pick their contenders. He said repeatedly, no, we don't do that here. We don't roll like that in the UFC. You fight the best of the best 3 times a year. I mean, how many times have we heard Dana White say that? Suddenly, he is selling his soul, it seems, to, again, defend, as if his career depends on it, the one fighter in his company who is a champion, who is avoiding the top contender like no other, not being active, and just wants to leave the UFC, it seems, after this ridiculous fight against Stipe Miocic. It is incredibly backwards, and again, Dana White is clearly losing his touch on reality. I think the reason he's doing this is because it's a reflection of his masters, the owners of the UFC, Ari Emanuel. These guys do not care about the sport like the Fertittas did. You can have issues with how the Fertittas handled the UFC, but they cared about the sport. They were fight fans. These new guys are not. And we could go back to 2016 and talk about how overnight, literally, once the UFC was sold, it changed immediately, and you could see that it was never going to be the same as it was under the Fertittas, and wasn't going to be as good. And that wasn't just the fact that big stars were leaving, it was the commitment these guys had to building the sport, or lack thereof. So it's a reflection of that, and Dana White just seems to be answering his boss's calls to just focus on the guy who is a star, who does make a lot of money for the company when he can actually make it to the fight, and defend him to the ends of the earth, because he is the most heavily criticised fighter at the moment because of how much he is avoiding Tom Aspinall. Credibility of the sport be damned, rankings be damned, etc., etc. That, I think, is why Dana White is doing this. And also, if you haven't seen it, check out this video Kevin Iole did, the guy who actually challenged Dana White at the press conference, talking about why he believes that Alex Pereira deserves to be ahead of Jon Jones, and why he likes the idea of him moving up to heavyweight. And I wanted to touch up briefly on why I'm not a big fan of this. Now, there's always this discussion about who has the better resume, who has the better legacy, Alex Pereira or Israel Adesanya. And Alex Pereira certainly has a case to be ahead of Adesanya, but because Adesanya is going to be fighting Dricus du Plessis in a few months, and there is a chance, of course, he could win, and that will just boost his legacy up more. I'm not going to go in on that debate too much right now, but Alex Pereira does have a case because he has moved up divisions and been very successful, and he has defeated a very impressive run of current or former champions. But as far as Alex Pereira moving up to heavyweight, do I like the idea of a guy like him chasing greatness and looking to become the first 3-weight world champion in history? Absolutely. I mean, that would put him to legendary status beyond belief. But style-wise, I don't like his chances. And the reason why is because Tom Aspinall is a guy who has Alex Pereira beat in most departments, okay? He is, of course, the better wrestler, and as we saw against Sergey Pavlovich and all of his other opponents, but the Pavlovich fight is what really impressed me. He is very fast, very athletic, very explosive, and he is also a natural heavyweight. Alex Pereira will, for the first time in the UFC, be fighting somebody who is naturally bigger than him, and very explosive, very sharp with the takedown, and also well-rounded. The striking of Tom Aspinall obviously is not as elite overall as Alex Pereira, but when you have a size advantage, which again, Tom Aspinall will have, and he also has a speed advantage because Alex Pereira, he is a very sharp striker who just moves forward. He doesn't use explosive movements in and out. He chooses to slowly move forward and stalk his opponents. Tom Aspinall is better at moving in and out very quickly, exploding out of nowhere than him, and the striking therefore could be fairly even. Of course, Aspinall could always get caught by that thunderous left hook, but he would also have the opportunity to catch Alex Pereira multiple times with the way that he moves a lot. And I don't think that is something Alex Pereira will be accustomed to, because nobody in the UFC has really been able to explode in and out against Alex Pereira, mostly because of his size advantage. He is so long and so sharp with those kicks and punches, and he's so good at closing the range that everybody suddenly becomes small when they stand next to him. Tom Aspinall is a completely different story because, again, he is naturally bigger, very explosive, everything I just explained. So, again, I don't like that for Alex Pereira. Could he win? Yes, but I'm not in a big hurry to see it. As for Jon Jones, it's an interesting one because Jon Jones at 36, and who knows if he is actually off the performance-enhancing drugs or not, he is very hittable compared to what he used to be. And in fact, he always used to be hittable. It's just a case where he's been fighting guys, for the most part, who aren't able to get to close the range on him because of the size difference. Whereas against Alex Pereira, he'll actually be fighting a guy who is very similar to him in size, but there is that wrestling problem. And I can see Jon Jones being able to take Alex Pereira down. With Jon Jones, it's not really his physical strength, although that was a big factor as to why he was so dominant at light heavyweight. It's the fact that he is so quick at changing angles when he does take you down. You see the way he goes for single legs, he trips you up, he goes for double legs, switches it up to a body lock, and he's just so quick with those transitions. Alex Pereira is very naturally gifted to where he, I believe, could match Jon Jones with the quickness department, but when you don't have a long history of defending grapplers and you don't come from a grappling background, it's just hard for me to pick Alex Pereira to beat Jon Jones. Now, if he would, oh boy, Alex Pereira would be a legend beyond belief. But I feel that he's at a disadvantage against these heavyweights to the point where I don't see the point in it. If he defeats Magomed Ankalaev this year, I mean, talking about legacy, that will push him up big time because Ankalaev is a different challenge than Jamal Hill and Yuri Prohashka. He presents new challenges, and if he actually fights smart and doesn't choose to be macho like he's talking about on Twitter, where he won't go for any takedowns, then this could be Alex Pereira's biggest challenge at light heavyweight. So I'm certainly very interested to see how that would go. If Alex Pereira wins and there are no big challenges at light heavyweight, and there really aren't, light heavyweight is so thin, and the only division that might be thinner than light heavyweight is heavyweight. So Alex Pereira moving up after that, I would be okay with it. And by that point, maybe Jon Jones is gone. Maybe, in fact, if he does fight Stipe, I expect he will be gone. And Tom Aspinall, he may have got to a point where Jon Jones would have had to fight him. Maybe I'm wishing on a star here, but you never know. It could happen. And if there are no big challenges at heavyweight for the champion, then maybe that would make more sense. But in the end, I'd rather go with Alex Pereira doing what I feel makes sense for his career rather than rushing something which I just don't think needs to happen. Again, I appreciate fighters chasing greatness, but I'm not going to be one of these guys who says, oh yes, I really want to see this guy chase greatness. And then when he loses, I say, well, he chased greatness. That is just a coping mechanism, really. When Israel Adesanya got dominated by Jan Blachowicz, all we heard afterwards was, well, he chased greatness, you have to give him credit for it. Whereas Adesanya should have never got that title shot in the first place. This here, because of the thinness of both divisions, it kind of makes a little bit more sense. But again, I feel Alex Pereira is at a deficit for all the reasons I spoke about. Therefore, not a huge fan of it. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours down below about whether you would like to see Alex Pereira move up. Why do you think Dana White is having these crazy meltdowns at press conferences, which are really unprecedented for him? And again, just how backwards it is. It's crazy. And who would you favour in these matchups? Alex Pereira against Tom Aspinall or John Jones? And how do you think the Ankalaev fight goes? Like the video and subscribe to the channel for more, guys. Catch you later.